On your screen, you have Daniel Dubov, one of the most creative players in the world of chess. He's going to take on the five-time world champion Vishwanathan Anand. Dubov is playing at the Levitov Chess Week and adjusts all his pieces. We are at the Waldorf Astoria in Amsterdam, and Dubov shakes hands with Vishy Anand. Vishy, 53 years of age, takes off his jacket, settles down. The evergreen maestro is having the black pieces against Dubov. Very exciting to see what the opening will be because Dubov always has some new ideas up his sleeve. We are ready to go and we begin. D4, knight f6, c4, e6. The knight comes out and Vishy plays the solid Queen's Gambit decline, but we have the Catalan on the board. D takes c4 accepted and he hits the center. Castles, both players blitzing out their moves. They've played this numerous times, but now Dubov taking a small pause there and plays knight a3. But Vishy is not really disturbed by this rarely played move. He's ready because he's played this before against none other than Magnus Carlsen. In fact, Dubov also has played this a3 with the idea of b4. Vishy stops it b3. You want to put your bishop here and try to later on recover this pawn. Black right now is pawn up. However, his bishop on c8 is not developed, and that's what gives white compensation. Vishy plays rook e8. He wants to push his pawn to e5. Dubov is smart. He goes here. If you play e5, knight ce5 and the bishop is hanging. That's the reason why the bishop first moves to a7. And now pawn up to b4. If you take, I take. And if you take here, I take the pawn on d4. And that's the reason why Anand cannot really capture the pawn on b4. But he does. Takes. And now e5 would be very ambitious, because there's b5 and then e4. It's very sharp, but Vishy takes the pawn on b4. And now Dubov can actually take on d4. Black is still a pawn up, but notice this bishop opening up and these two knights in the center controlling so many squares. Vishy chops off one of the knights, and after bishop takes d4, now Dubov is angling at the b6 square along with both his pieces, and again the bishop is fantastically placed on g2. How is Vishy going to respond to this? He has to play this accurately. He goes knight c6, which is the best move in the position. With this, he kind of blunts this bishop on g2 and also attacks the bishop on d4. Bishop c5 played by Dubov. He's looking at the d6 square. It's quite a weak square there, and if a knight jumps in there, attacks the rook and the b7 pawn, Vishy trades the queen. Rook d1. White's position is a picture of harmony. Look at all his pieces. So beautifully placed. But now e5. Anand knows when it's very, very critical to sort of activate his pieces. Dubov takes a small think there and now plays his knight to d6. The time control of this game is 10 minutes plus 5 seconds increment. Rook comes to d8 and now bishop b6 can be played, hitting the rook. That's what Dubov does. He plays bishop here and now Vishy goes to f8. He is passive and Dubov can actually take back the pawn with bishop c6, rook c6. But he is very ambitious. That's why he plays his rook to d2. And now Vishy goes in with his rook to a4. One of the ideas here could be to push the pawn to e4 with the rook supporting this way to blunt the bishop. And that's exactly what Vishy has done. But now there could be a deadly disco here from the bishop to the rook. But instead Dubov goes rook to b2. Putting pressure here on the b7 pawn, and Anand quickly goes here now to take on c8 or on b7. What's better? No, he blunders big time. Knight takes b7. Can you spot what the mistake here is? Because knight c8 was fine, but the moment he's taken the pawn. Now, if you take on b7, then rook b7 and white is completely fine. However, Vishy has this amazing vicious move, rook c4. And the point is, this is attacked and this is attacked. If you take the rook, I come in with a check, bishop f1 and bishop h3 with a forced mate on f1. You can't stop it. So actually speaking, this move rook c4 is an absolutely brilliant move here. Now either Dubov takes the rook or he has to move it away. But if he moves away and Vichy finds it, rook c4 has been played. Whoa, Dubov is lost. You can see there that small little expression on his face saying that I did not see that one coming there. And the game is actually over. He can also not go rook b1, because if you go here I can take on c1, take on c1 and take on b7. He plays rook a1, but after bishop takes, well, if you took with the rook here, then rook c5 is hanging, so he goes bishop e3 back. But now bishop c8 is played and rook to b8, but bishop can come out now, bishop e6, and that's what Anand does. He's a piece up and the rest is quite easy for the maestro there. Rook goes in, he goes and blocks it, takes. Dubov doesn't even have one pawn for the piece. It's completely a lost hope. He wants to take on f6 and win the pawn on e4, but Vichy is very quick to defend it. Bishop takes f6, gf, bishop h3, and now knight e6. Pawn comes up, and it's nice to see how Vichy converts this. Bishop f5. He's trying to stop the king from coming up, but the knight goes to c5. Pawn h4, the bishop comes in, and now bishop e6. You can't trade, so the bishop goes back, and Anand moves his pawn forward to bring his king into the game, and he does that. King f6, king f1, the king moves in. Dubov is playing out of inertia. He could very well resign the game, but he wants to just see how Vichy is going to break through here, but I think that's the end of it. He thinks for a bit and resigns with a smile on his face. Very, very sportsmanlike by Dubov. And he also analyzes with Vichy after the game. Let's see what Vichy has to say about this win.
Vichy, I was in the tournament in the VIP room, and everyone exclaimed when you found this move rook c4 against Dubov, this trick. Had you seen it beforehand?
I actually only saw it after I played rook d8. Because rook d8, I was calculating knight b7, bishop b7, rook b7, some way to keep the knights in position. And then suddenly, while I was waiting for him, I thought, wait a minute, I have rook c4. Of course, he can't play this. And then he took his knight, and it wasn't clear to me where he would go. He could take on c8, which is perfectly fine, but then he took on b7, and then I spent a few seconds just to check, because after a day like this you don't believe anything. But anyway, it turned out to be correct, and luckily he can move the other rook, but whatever he does, there is no square from where the bishop can attack anything. From c5, my knight on c6 is controlling, so somehow I escape.